Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline from Pudgy Cat Games, and today we are going to be looking at the Clock Strikes Midnight, the two-player mode. Today we'll be covering how to play, how to get everything set up, and trying to answer any questions that you may have along the way. So for those that don't know, this game has a solo mode as well. We have a separate video for that. So if you're trying to play the solo mode, check out that video. It is a little bit different in terms of gameplay and setup. But we're going to look at two-player mode today. So let's start with a quick overview of the game so you know what you need to do to win. Basically, The Clock Strikes Midnight is about Cinderella and the stepmother. Cinderella wants to go to the ball, meet the prince, fall in love. However, you all know the evil stepmother wants her daughters to go to the ball, meet the prince, and fall in love instead. So she's going to do everything that she can do to try to stop Cinderella from getting to the ball. Cinderella's fairy godmother gave her this pocket watch that we have here in order to help make sure that she is home before the clock strikes midnight and all the magic wears off. However, as you can see, the numbers are all messed up. So right now the watch is of no use to Cinderella. So before Cinderella can go to the ball, she needs to get all of her numbers into the right spots in order to fix the watch and get there, meet the prince, fall in love, and live happily ever after. The stepmother is going to do everything that she can do to try to stop that from happening. In two-player mode, one player is going to take on the role of Cinderella, one person is going to take on the role of the stepmother, and the first person to collect 6 different hour cubes is the winner. So how do you collect an hour cube exactly? You do that by getting your individual player color. So Cinderella is going to be this light blue color right here, and the evil stepmother is going to be this dark blue color over here. So you need to get your numbers into the correct location on the clock in what's known as the on top position of the card. On top, meaning that if you look at the clock right, the individual card right here, it's in that position that is a 12 o'clock position on the card. So the one that's actually on top of the card. So this 1 o'clock would need to be over here in this place in order for Cinderella to score that hour cube. Down here, we have the hour cube tracker. Let me hover over it so you can kind of see what it looks like. So each space is identified by which hour it represents, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the first player to score their card in the right spot, so if Cinderella was the first one to get a number 1 in this 1 o'clock space on the clock, and her colored 1 on top of the card, she could take this 1 o'clock cube, and that would count as 1 hour. If the stepmother got hers in first, she would take the cube. So it's going to go back and forth, and the first person to collect 6 cubes wins. So now you might be wondering, how exactly do you get those numbers into the correct places? So if we look over here in the middle, you're going to notice that there are 4 cards. Right now, we have the rotator card. This will be in every single game you play. It will always be the top leftmost card out of the 4 cards. The other 3 cards are double-sided, and which ones you choose to play with are up to you, or you can pick them randomly. This round, we have 2 opposite cards, 2 adjacent cards, and 2 cards with matching symbols. And these are swap actions. So rotate is always going to allow you to rotate a card, and you're going to rotate it in the direction that this coin gets flipped. However, in Tabletop Simulator, I have issues getting the coin to flip correctly, so we're going to use a dice instead. So at the start of the first player's turn every round, we're going to roll this dice. If it lands on an odd number, you'll be able to rotate a card clockwise for that round. If it lands on an even number, you'll be able to rotate a card counterclockwise. So on your turn, you're going to pick to do one of these 4 actions. If you take the rotate action, you can take whatever direction you're allowed to rotate. You can rotate 1 card in that direction of your choice. There is a special bonus that we're going to talk about in a little while for rotation, but for all intents and purposes, rotate means rotate a card. The swap means that you're going to be changing the location of 2 cards. So opposite means directly across from each other on the clock. So for example, this card in the 12 o'clock position could swap with this card in the 6 o'clock position, or the card in the 7 o'clock position could swap with, the 9 o'clock position could swap with the card in the 3 o'clock position. So anything that's directly across on the clock. Adjacent means right next to, so you could swap 2 cards that are next to each other. And matching symbols, if you look in the middle, we have some magical items here. So you have Cinderella's dress, you have a pumpkin, and you have the slipper. Fun fact, in the original Cinderella, the slipper was not a glass slipper, it was actually a gold slipper, so we tried to allude to that with our golden slippers on the cards here. So matching symbols means that the cards have the same symbol on the inside, so for example, if I wanted to swap this one and this one, I would be able to do that because the symbols match. So that's the different actions you'll be able to take. The opposite sides of these cards, you have swap 2 cards with odd numbers on top. So remember, on top meaning in the 12 o'clock position on that individual card. So you could swap like this 1 and this 3 if you wanted to. We also have swap 2 cards with an even number on top. So same thing, you could do like this 10 and this 8. And you have swap 2 cards with the same color on top. So if you look, we have 3 different colors around each card. There is a light blue, a dark blue, and a medium blue. There is actually a pattern on each card as well. That is to help any colorblind players be able to differentiate between the 3 tones. And that little wheel on the bottom, if you look down here, there's a 1 that says 1, that little gold wheel. That's just to identify what card number that is in the deck. This is so that way if you ever wanted to go head to head against somebody, you could actually lay your cards out in the same order, and then you could compete to see who can solve the clock in the least amount of turns. So it's an alternative play mode. It will also allow us to do challenges, but for all intents and purposes in this game, you can completely ignore that number. You'll see that the middle cards also have that. Same thing, can just ignore that. It's really just to identify which card is which. So basically on your turn, you're going to take one of the 4 available actions. Then you're going to check to see if you score any of the hour cubes. If you do, great. And then you will have the option of taking a bonus action should you choose to. If you look down here on our board, I'm going to use the magnifying tool so that way you can kind of see more. There's a Cinderella side and a stepmother side. Depending on which player goes first, the first player is going to get 2 special bonus action cubes, and the second player is going to get 3. So we're going to say Cinderella is going to go first for this example. So Cinderella is going to only have 2 cubes, and the stepmother is going to have 3, so we'll delete one of Cinderella's. These bonus actions are asymmetric, meaning that Cinderella has a specific type of bonus action, and the stepmother has others. So Cinderella's bonus cubes allow her to take 2 actions in 1 turn. So if at the end of her turn, she has done her action, whether it was rotate or swap something, check to see if it was scored, she could choose to take another action if she has a bonus cube left. If she does, she would move that to the bottom row to indicate that it has been used. She only gets 2 bonus actions for the whole game, so use them wisely, because if you use them correctly, you can use them to score extra cubes on your turn, and it might even win you a turn the game that round. The stepmother, however, these are her cubes that are known as daughter cubes. Basically, she's going to go deploy her daughters to go out into the world and try to make things more complicated for Cinderella. So the stepmother would take her turn the same way. She takes one of the 4 available actions, checks to see if anything is scored, and then she can choose whether or not to deploy a daughter. If she does, she gets to put one of her cubes on one of the 4 cards, whichever one she covers. So say she picked this one. On Cinderella's next turn, the daughter is blocking that action, meaning that Cinderella cannot take that action even if she wants to. So Cinderella would only be able to pick from one of the 3 available actions on that following turn. When the stepmother's turn comes back around, that cube gets removed, gets placed on the used one, and it is used up and cannot be used again. Once all of the daughters are used the same way, once all the wishes are used, that's it. You don't get any more for the game, so use them wisely. The stepmother, the one contingency is that she cannot block the same action 2 times in a row. So if she blocked the rotate a card action 1 turn, removed it, on her next turn, she can't choose to block the rotate a card action again. She could choose to block something else, though, if she wanted to. On Cinderella's turn, if, say, the rotate a card action was blocked, Cinderella took one of the other 3 actions and then decided to use a wishing cube, she still cannot take that rotate a card action as her second action. Typically, you can take any 2 actions that you would like. They just have to be available. They can be the same or they could be different, but you cannot take one that's blocked, and it's considered blocked until the stepmother's following turn, so she would not be able to take that even if she wanted to, even if she used a wish. So as numbers get scored, so in this case, as the stepmother gets her cards, the dark blue numbers, into the correct position on the clock and on the card, she would score cubes, and Cinderella needs to get the light blue number into the right spot on the card and on the clock. Only the first player to get their number in the right spot scores that golden hour cube. So if both the stepmother and Cinderella manage to get their 1 into the correct spot at some point, whoever did it first gets the cube. The other person does not get any of it. Numbers do not need to stay in place. Unlike in solo mode, if you watch that tutorial, in solo mode you need to get everything in the final spaces, so that way at the end of the game they're all exactly where they need to be. You do not need to end with 6 of your numbers in the correct spot in order to win. You just need to claim 6 of the cubes. Once a cube is claimed, that number can be swapped or rotated out of position, and it doesn't matter, you still get to keep the cube. You just need to get it there in the first place in order to score it. And that's really it in order to get started. You'll notice that you do have reference guides as well. They're a little hard to see on Tabletop Simulator. They're a lot easier to see in person. But basically it just goes over the player colors, the setup, and what to do at the start of a round. So without further ado, we're going to start walking through this game so you can see what it looks like. So I mentioned Cinderella is going to go first. So Cinderella, as the first player, is going to roll this dice just to determine which direction we're going to be able to rotate cards this round. And normally, as I mentioned, you would flip this rotate rotate a card coin, but it just doesn't flip properly in Tabletop Simulator for me. So we're going to use the dice instead. So this round, we can rotate things clockwise. So Cinderella, as I mentioned, she's light blue. So let's look around the outside of the clock and see if any of her numbers are in a good spot. So right now, her 11's kind of close to where she might want it to be. The 9's kind of close. The 4 is kind of close. The 3, however, is in a great spot for her because if we look, we can rotate one card clockwise. So if we rotate this 3 clockwise, it is now in the on top position in the 3 o'clock space. So if you look, if this was 12 o'clock, 1, 2, 3, it's on top, it's her color. So Cinderella is already going to score this hour cube. And now it's going to be the stepmother's turn. We don't re-roll the die. Cinderella will re-roll that on her turn. It stays the same for both players each round. So now the stepmother is going to look, and same thing. So she's going to look around and see she's dark blue if any of her numbers are in an ideal spot. So her 7's in a pretty good spot right now. We might be able to rotate that in place. But sometimes it's worth it still checking, not just looking at the first thing that you find, because sometimes what might look like a good action turns out that you could actually maybe score 2 numbers doing something else instead. So just because we saw this and we went, yeah, we could score that this round, doesn't necessarily mean that that's the most ideal action. So something to note here, we do have the swap and adjacent number. So if Cinderella had not already taken the 3 o'clock hour cube, we could have done that and scored this number. However, since Cinderella already scored that, even if we get our 3 o'clock in place here, nothing happens. So we are not going to take that action because it really doesn't help us. So it does look like the best action for the stepmother right now is going to be to take that rotate action. So she is also going to rotate, and we are going to score the 7 o'clock number. And I just have them set up into zones. So Cinderella's over here, and the stepmother's over here. If you were playing on Tabletop Simulator with 2 people, you would each have your own zone that you could throw your things into. But for now, just note Cinderella this way, stepmother that way. So now Cinderella is up again. Right now, it's still pretty early in the game, so neither player is really going to consider using their bonus actions because it's not super helpful just yet. They get helpful as you start to get closer, and maybe you have like 3 or 4 hour cubes because the stepmother really wants to stop Cinderella from kind of continuously speeding up, and Cinderella wants to try to push her luck and try to get as many in as soon as possible to try to finish the game first. So Cinderella is up again. So again, we can rotate something clockwise. So Cinderella is now going to look around here. It doesn't look like any of her other cards are in particularly perfect spots for scoring. So we're going to consider if there's any swapping or rotating things that might be better for us. So let's look at opposite. So the 2 would need to get moved to over here. We have a pumpkin and a dress, so that's not exactly possible. We have a 1 over here. That's a pumpkin and a shoe. That doesn't quite help either. The 7 has already been scored. So there's nothing that we can do individually on this turn to score the cubes. So the most we can do is try to hopefully set something up for the future. So what I typically would do is start looking at, all right, so we could maybe swap these 2 and get the 6 o'clock in place. So that way it's a little bit closer, or we could maybe swap something across, or 1 is kind of where we want it to be. So there's a couple of different possibilities here, but she's also going to look at what does the stepmother have. Right now, the stepmother could potentially swap this one right here and get her 12 into the right spot, just needs to get rotated. So Cinderella's going to say, all right, we're going to maybe consider swapping some things around here. So we're going to swap this shoe and this shoe because we're able to swap cards with matching symbols. So even though they're not adjacent or opposite, they both have a shoe, which allows us to switch them. So now our 6 is kind of hopefully waiting, and hopefully the stepmother is not going to mess that up for us. We could choose to use that bonus action and rotate that right away, but we're going to sit on that for a little while because I think it's still a little too early in the game to use that. So now our stepmother is going to go. So she's going to do the same thing, just look and see if anything could potentially have been rotated into place. It does not look like it, but we're going to see. So we have a 4 on top right now. That's not really helpful because it's not opposite, adjacent, or a matching symbol. We have a 6 on top, but again, not opposite, adjacent, or matching symbol. An 8 on top, which is also not exactly what we want, but this might be a good swap for us because it gets it closer and it's only 1 position off at that point. So she's going to do that. All right, so Cinderella is going to go again. All right, so again, still rotating things clockwise. So what does Cinderella want to do? Cinderella is very happy about that clockwise rotation because she can now do this. And something that we haven't talked about yet is what's known as the connected gear option. And I'm going to explain what that is after right now so that way you can kind of see what happens. So just like gears in real life, when you have gears that are connected, they will turn together. So in The Clock Strikes Midnight, something is considered a connected gear when you have a matching symbol adjacent to the card that you are rotating. And just like in real life, when you rotate one gear clockwise, the other gear is going to rotate counterclockwise because that's how they pull and feed together. So in this case, we rotated this card clockwise. If we look outward, you're going to see we have some other cards here that also have matching symbols, meaning that they are considered connected gears. So cards that are immediately adjacent to the card we just rotated will rotate just like an actual gear did. So we rotated this one clockwise, meaning that this card is going to rotate counterclockwise. This card is also immediately adjacent, so it will also rotate counterclockwise. And if we look, we have one more that's still attached. And this one, as it's immediately adjacent to the card that just rotated counterclockwise, will rotate clockwise. So that allows us to kind of manipulate multiple things in one turn. It's possible that we could have turned some numbers into spots we actually wanted them into. In the solo mode, connected gears stop when a card is in the right place. In individual, in 2-player mode, that does not happen. They'll just continue to rotate either clockwise or counterclockwise down the chain, just opposite of whatever the card next to them just did. So we had a clockwise rotation, the 2 next to them are both counterclockwise, and this one is clockwise because the card next to it was counterclockwise. So now we check for scoring. So we're going to notice our 6 is in the right spot. The Cinderella can take that. And now Cinderella has a choice. She could choose to take another action right now if she wanted to. So our 4 is pretty close to where we want it to be. So we might decide that we want to swap these to try to get that 4 into the correct location. And I think Cinderella is going to decide to try to do that and push her luck a little bit as we get closer into or further into the game. So she's going to do that and she'll have moved that. All right, so now our stepmother is going to be up. So same thing, she's going to look around, see what her options are. So we moved this card last time. It didn't get impacted this time, so we're going to do it once more. And we're going to rotate, not to rotate, we're going to swap, and we're going to get that 8 o'clock into the right spot. So stepmother is going to take that 8. So now we're tied, but the stepmother is going to start thinking about, is there anything that Cinderella really might want to do in order to try to get some things scored quicker? So we know she wants to rotate this because she just used that bonus action to try to get that number in the most ideal location for her. So what we're going to think about doing, the stepmother is going to deploy one of her daughters. She's going to put her on that rotate a card option, meaning that Cinderella's next turn, she can't rotate whether she wants to or not, which essentially effectively stops her from being able to score this 4 on the next turn. None of her other numbers are in a particularly perfect location yet, so hopefully that will slow her down a little bit. So it's Cinderella's turn again. She's going to roll the dice. So 1, rotate clockwise. So interestingly enough, in this case, it wouldn't have made a difference on this individual card. However, Remember, the connected gears are still a thing. So we could have chosen to rotate this card clockwise, which would have made this one turn counterclockwise. So that's where the gears really come in handy, because it allows you to kind of take multiple actions, even if the one that you want is not readily available. However, Cinderella can't take that rotator card action at all, meaning that she can't pick a different card or anything like that, so she has to pick a different option. So Cinderella's going to look and see what her choices are right now. So I think she's going to go with the swap 2 adjacent cards. Could also be swap 2 matching symbols because they both have this symbol. But this will allow Cinderella to get her 2 into one space away and her 12 into the correct space. She just needs to rotate it. So this kind of sets her up pretty nicely. And then Cinderella is actually going to use her bonus action to, she's going to use her wishing cube, ask her fairy godmother to grant her a wish, and she's going to take that swap an adjacent card action again. And that's going to score her the 2. The reason that she's doing that is she's really trying to push the game forward and see, right now she has 2 other cards that are in potential prime scoring position, which would really only leave her needing 1 more card to get into the right location. So she really doesn't want the stepmother to knock that out before it has a chance to go anywhere. So this way she knows she scored the 2. There's no chance of it disappearing or getting moved around the board. So now the stepmother's up at the start of her turn. She's going to remove her daughter, send her back to the ball, and she is going to take an action. So let's see what's still available. So we can still score a 1, a 4, a 5, and a 9 to 12. So we're looking at kind of this range, the 1, this 4 over here, or the 5. So let's see what could be helpful for us. Where is our 4 at? It is hiding somewhere. It is all the way over here. So we don't have a pumpkin. It's not exactly opposite. Our 1, however, is in a pretty good spot. So we might do that. We're going to rotate this one. And as you can see, there's not a dress on either side. So these other cards are not going to rotate, but we can score our 1 cube. Now, this turn, we know Cinderella has 2 cards kind of in prime scoring position. However, we can't block that rotate a card action again. So we're going to hold off because right now she might be able to get other things in place, but we'd rather kind of save this for a potential future turn, maybe block that action again or block a more ideal swap at that time. So Cinderella is up once more. We have a rotate a counterclockwise action, which is exactly what we were looking for. So Cinderella is going to rotate this card. And the reason that she's going to do that is because it will rotate some other cards too, kind of throw them a little bit more out of line, and kind of just increase the possibility of mixing things up in a potentially favorable pattern. So we're going to rotate this counterclockwise, which means this rotates clockwise, this rotates counterclockwise, and this rotates clockwise. So our 4 is now in prime scoring position. We're going to take that 4. All right, our stepmother is up, and we're going to see if we can get anything into a good spot. So where is our 5? That's all the way over here. So our 5 and our 12 are kind of like an ideal swap right now because they're both in locations that we kind of want them to be in. However, there's not an easy way to get those 2 next to each other. So we could either choose to try to do like a 3-way swap where we swap these 2 and then this one next turn to get something in the right spot. Or we can see if our 9, 10, or 11 are in a better potentially scoring position. So our 10 is over here, which we could kind of swap into the 11 o'clock spot potentially. Our 11 is over here. Same thing, we could swap it into the 10 o'clock position potentially. Where's our 9? Our 9 is over here. Same thing, we could kind of swap it semi-across nearby. But what I think we're going to do in this case is we're going to swap these 2. And the reason is, now our 10 is across from the 10 o'clock spot, and our 9 is across from the 9 o'clock spot, which gives us some nice opposite swaps in the future to try to get a couple different cards in place. And it doesn't put our Cinderella opponent into any prime scoring position. So this turn, we do know that Cinderella is still looking to rotate her 12 o'clock card. We don't really want her to do that because we know that will score her a point. So we're going to block that rotate a card action once more. And Cinderella is going to be up. She's going to roll the dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, So we have a rotate something clockwise. So again, didn't quite work out as we hoped because she wouldn't have been able to score it anyway, but better safe than sorry. All right, so Cinderella is going to try to see where her cards are. So now she knows we're trying to go for things that are over here, so she might try to see if she has an option to get anything into the right spot too. So her 11 o'clock, she could get into the 11 o'clock spot, just would need to be rotated. And her 9 o'clock is somewhere over here. That's not really a super ideal one, so we're going to do this. We're going to swap these two. It would also bring her 9 o'clock right next to her 9 o'clock. And she has no more bonus actions, so she can't do anything extra this turn. Now our evil stepmother is going to swap things across. So we kind of know at this point that Cinderella is going to be going for that 11 in hopes that she can rotate something into place. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to claim this 9 first and hope that Cinderella doesn't intentionally swap these two next turn, which she might if she doesn't get the rotate that she's hoping for. But realistically, she could use either rotate right now to get the 11 or the 12. And we are supposed to remove this cube, so that goes away. And Cinderella is up again. So we have a rotate clockwise action. So Cinderella is going to be very happy about this, and she is going to rotate this card right here. And she's going to score the 11 o'clock cube. So now Cinderella only needs one more cube to win, whereas our stepmother needs a couple. So our stepmother really needs to start thinking about, like, how am I going to stop Cinderella on her turn? So first up, the stepmother is going to see if she could do anything here. The rotate does not pan out in her favor this time. So she's going to take that swap opposite action again, and she's going to do this. And this. And then what we're going to do, we know that Cinderella really wants to score this one. So we're going to try to say, nope, once more, you cannot do that. Other than we can't do that one because we blocked that last turn. So we don't have the, oh no, we didn't. We did not block that last turn because Cinderella was able to rotate. So because it wasn't blocked, we can take that action. So now knowing that we're not blocking that this turn, Cinderella is going to roll and hope for the best. All right, so Cinderella cannot rotate this card. However, Cinderella could say that she's going to do this adjacent. She's going to move those two, get her 9 in the spot, and our 9 out of the spot. All right, we are up as a stepmother again, so that cube is done. We no longer have daughters to deploy, so we need to kind of finish this as soon as possible. So what's kind of fun here is we can rotate this counterclockwise if we want to, and that will actually spin these as well. So if we rotate this one counterclockwise, this now rotates clockwise. So we're going to score that 10 o'clock cube. And while Cinderella's number is now in the correct space on top on her 9 o'clock card, she is not going to score that. You can only score if you rotate your card into the space or swap your card into the space on your turn. This also applies to the start of the game. We didn't have any numbers that started in the correct spot the way they were dealt out this round. But if a number is in the correct location for somebody at the start of the game, it does not automatically score them a point. You can only score it when it's on your turn. So we effectively just messed up Cinderella's little plan here to try and score her 9 o'clock on this turn. So now the stepmother is really going to cross her fingers and hope that we do not get an even number on this. So Cinderella cannot rotate this one counterclockwise. So let's see what happens. And all right, so Cinderella is up. We did get a counterclockwise action. So Cinderella is going to rotate her 12, take this cube, and Cinderella is going to win the game right then and there. And that is how you play the 2-player version of The Clock Strikes Midnight. Really be the first to collect the 6 cubes, and you win. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to go through anything that you'd need. In Tabletop Simulator, we do have the rulebook as well. If you hover over it, you can kind of see everything in here. There's instructions for solo mode and 2-player mode in the rulebook, as well as some frequently asked questions, explanations of what all the different actions mean, and some fun little score ranking systems just when you're playing by yourself to see how you did, some achievements, and a quick reference guide on the back. But if you have questions, as always, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And we hope that you enjoyed this game and that you have fun. Thanks for joining, everybody. Bye.